digital delight of jazz and what's more on WFDU HD2, TNEC.
Voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
What's going on? What's happening, blues peoples? You know what it is. It is that time for your weekly dose of blues music, history, heritage, culture, and traditions. And if you've been following this show and our platform all together, you would understand there's many different levels of this tradition, culture, and heritage. There's the music part. There's the culture part that makes the music. Then there is the literature part. And I'm really excited about our guest today. Did I tell you where you are? This is WFDU HD2, baby. Stop this. So I had to let you know, Jack Dapper Blues. But anyway, I'm really excited about this interview because I've been hosting and producing with the Pearly family and King Kataki and Brother Jimmy a series called at New Amsterdam Musical Association called Nama's Blues and Poetry Series, which is extremely important because poetry goes hand in hand with the blues. First of all, the blues is an oral tradition. The instruments outside of your voice come second. Poetry is an oral documentation of our traditions, as well as the poetry that gave visuals of juke joints and rent parties. My guest today has been an ongoing high-level performer at this series, this event that I host, as well as a poet, writer, producer of television content and web content, and the author of Gathering the Waters. Please give a Jack Dapper Blues welcome to Keisha-Gaye Anderson. What's going on, sis?
Hey, how are you doing?
I am bluesing, but I'm happy to be alive. Can you dig it?
Of course. That's right.
So now you like me wear many, many hats.
Yeah, I do.
and you're extremely active. I don't want to say busy because busy makes it sound, gives it a negative connotation. But you're extremely active in the artist, activist writing, and content community. So it's hard to know where to begin. But considering Women's Month, considering Writers Month, Poetry Month, I believe, and considering your book that is now available, Gathering the Waters, why don't we talk about your journey? Or we could start with your journey into becoming a writer.
Well, it's hard even to say where to begin because I've always been a storyteller. And I know there is extreme power in telling stories, This is something that's very human. This is something we do naturally, and some people are better at it than others. And I know, I'm from Jamaica, and storytelling, as you know, also in African American culture, is just a big part, a natural part of how we gather, and pass things on. So I think I was probably 7, and I just started writing. And it took many different forms, and I've explored all of them. I think poetry was my first a means of expressing myself. It moved me very early, and so it's a fixture, early on. But I've done a lot of different kinds of writing.
Now, I want to get into those different kind of writings, but before we do that, you specifically said the storytelling is traditional in the Black diaspora.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And your book is called Gathering the Waters. Could you, is that why you decided to give it that name?
I think so. I think that where I find myself living in this time in the world, coming from the diaspora, we are just a culmination of so many different forces coming together and really shaping the industrial world. That's the labor of our ancestors that is responsible for the industrialization that catapults us to where we are today. I mean, really, if you really think about it. And for me, the water is representing that depth of wisdom, of knowing, that ancestral memory. And gathering it means like it's time for us to really come together and marshal, what we have, what we've learned to, chart a new future, redefine our role, get out of being a perpetual servant class. I'm going to go ahead and say that.
Well, don't be bashful now.
I'm going to say that because I've traveled. I have been fortunate, and also fortunate, yes, but also I'm very hardworking, very strategic, and I've traveled all over the world, and everywhere I go, that's what I see, for the most part,
So are you saying everywhere you've been, that you've been blessed? And again, I like how you worded that, because though you've been blessed with these opportunities, you've busted your hump to get them, right? Because a lot of people think blessings come with no cost.
Oh, no. Heavy cost.
Heavy cost. But that's the conversation for a different time. But so these places you were able to travel to and see, you witnessed that Black folk is catching hell all over the globe. Is this what you're saying?
I would say that there's a normalization of seeing Black people as subordinate, inferior. And the places I have traveled to in South America, in Africa, these are all former colonies, you must understand.
Right.
I didn't go to Ethiopia. They weren't colonized. I don't know. It's probably different there. But I've been to former colonies, and I would say because of that shared legacy and because of the way the economy is set up and everything, the architecture that is left there, the way the society is built, this is what obtains. This is what it is. And then there are those who are upwardly mobile, and even in, my own family certainly has a lot of accomplished, prominent people who played a major role in shaping Jamaica culturally and politically. By and large, though, this is what I see. And I think that Gathering the Waters is about stopping and saying, look at the richness of, what we have, what we've learned, and looking at success differently. Do we have to, I don't know how it is possible for people to use the same framework in which they were oppressed to sort of build a new prosperity. I don't know how that works. I've never seen that happen.
So let me ask you, and by no means am I putting words in your mouth, but I might be receiving that statement a tad bit biased because of my beliefs. So I just want to clarify for myself and the audience. We cannot rise or separate or get out of this generational oppression if we think success is assimilating. Is that what you're saying?
Assimilating. I would say, essentially what I'm saying is we have to go deep in those deep waters of the subconscious, of our creativity, and invent something new. And that won't only benefit us, but everybody.
Absolutely.
This is what I mean. I don't think, assimilation, it depends. It's case by case. That might be what you need to do on your journey to do whatever you're doing. I'm just saying wholesale underclass status. How do we we have to think about our lives differently and think about what is important for us to have and to do and to pursue, and actually literally think of ourselves differently than the archetypes that are given to us. And I mean everybody. I mean, I'm concerned with my community because that's who I know best. But you can apply this to any group who is given a certain, archetypical role and say, this is who you are. Well, I say who I am. And maybe I want to write a new story, I
know, I dig it, and I agree. And now I have to ask you about your writing, because off air, you shared inadvertently when we were having a conversation that you had some music in the background. I want to talk about your writing style. Share what the music was, and then get into how you're inspired and what makes you write what you write, please.
Oh, you're talking about when I said I write to Coltrane and
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I often will put on instrumental music. I have fiction that is published, short fiction. I have a novel I'm working on, but I think definitely when it's instrumental, it just helps me to get into the zone. It has to be a certain kind of music. It may be classical music. It's quite often jazz, more often than not, and it just helps to tune me.
Get you into space?
Yeah, get me in the right. I asked my husband the other day, I said, put on some music. We're doing some work. And he put on, it was jazz, but it was like crazy. It had all these horns. No. I need Coltrane.
He threw in some acid jazz and it took you to a different dimension?
Yeah, it was like, I don't know who the artist was, but it was just very high energy. I was like, no. I need to be in a certain relaxed space. And, that's part of my process. So, I get into that space and I really just don't hinder myself. It's my imagination. That's just the most fun. You get into your imagination, all kinds of things come up.
Absolutely, which is what a good segue to what I wanted to ask you. As you know, I subscribe to writers such as Baba Nguma, and Leroy Jones, K.A. Amiri Baraka. Mm-hmm. Now, I always say them in the same sentence. Nguma, don't hurt me, brother. I can't help. Sorry. But one of the reasons why I bring this up is because one of the things that stuck with me that Leroy Jones and Amiri Baraka said that he was challenged by writers in third world countries, not in a bad way, but as fellow writers, that you have to, you should use, I'm paraphrasing here, okay? You should use your platform to speak for the voiceless. So if a group of people is having some sort of turmoil in their social climate, financial, whatever the case it is, it's your duty to do that. I bring this up because I want to know what makes you address issues. You're clear that you allow yourself the openness to just create, which is hard for some people because they're like, okay, I have to write this and it has to be about this. But how do you address issues? Does it just pop, or do you say, you know what, this is something that needs to be addressed?
Well, it's everything I'm writing is coming out of my personal experience, and then the wider circle is my family, and then the wider circle will be my culture, right? So I am living that experience, and I'm reflecting what I'm going through and what I see. And, I'm a black woman. I mean, and this is, the things that I'm experiencing probably can apply to other people who are marginalized. So maybe in the way that I'm writing, it has appeal, but I'm not, to me, it's more important it's witnessing. It's like, I have to note that this reality is at play, because in 100 years, this may not be in the book. You know how many stories we don't know? All you got to do is look around today to see whose voices are missing 200, 300 years ago. Just know it, because it's the same people, same players, The same sort of market economy. All these things have been around for a while, and they function the same way. So, you just have to look around and say, boy, these people, imagine how many people have these stories and experiences that are not documented, are not told, are just completely ignored, are invisible. And I happen to be born into a physical manifestation that fits one of those groups that's often made invisible.
Mm.
Quite often made invisible. I was doing some research into my family for a story, and even just getting the name of my maternal ancestors past my great-grandmother. We don't even have that. It's like her name was, I'm just picking a name. So her name was Sally. Because it wasn't important to know their names. That's my opinion.
Mm.
Who cares about a black woman? That was just, that's just the unconscious driving force behind people even seeing you, and so I know my worth as a human being walking around this planet, and I'm here, and I'm here to say I'm here. I don't care who cares. I don't care what people think. I'm here, and I'm going to have my experience, and I'm going to document it and process it how I want, because I feel it's my right to live unassaulted and healthy and be able to develop my talents to their highest level as a human being, and no matter what I look like. I'm not going to get in anybody else's way if they want to do that, but if they want to do that on my back, we're going to fight.
And that's really just that.
That's how it's going to be. And I think if more of us took that position, strategically, I'm not literally talking about fighting, but I'm saying fighting for your respect. And, it's always the minority of people from whatever group that push that movement forward. It's never the majority of people. It's always the few. It's John Lewis on that bridge on Bloody Sunday,
Right.
It's just this one brave person. We got to be those people, because there's a lot of people who don't have that courage, to do that. And look, where would we be if he didn't do that? Where would we be today if he didn't say, this is unfair, I'm going to do something, No,
I agree, and which leads me to this question, because what I hear is culture is important. So, and I would like you pretty much just explain why it's important. But we're in a climate right now where finances for cultural programs are being depleted, mm-hmm. and books, educational books on cultures, that represent our diaspora, for that matter, is being they're lying. They're just changing it and lying. How?
Here's the dilemma. This is the catch-22, because there is no barrier to publishing now, right?
Mm-hmm.
The tools that are available, like never before. There's low barrier, right? And if we're doing this for humanitarian reasons and we're documenting our culture, and we're not doing it for profit per se, right? There are enough of us, if we are concerned, who can come together and make LLCs and make little publishing companies whose mission it is to preserve that information. But we have to know what to want. And we unfortunately want we want to be a part of the dominant culture in so many ways that we reject sometimes the little startup person who is doing that, and we look at it as lower quality. When they're sometimes self-published stuff, yes, it's amateurish. But if you have enough skilled people who come together and say they're going to do this is how little publishing companies. I'm published by a small press,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
who came together and said, "This is our mission. This is what we want to do." And their mandate was to publish writers who are also like community activists. And so I fit the bill. And so they published my work,
Right.
They are doing it. They publish many books. It's not out of reach. So I think we need to stop looking to who I don't want to frame it as a problem of they're not doing this, they're not funding us. We have to we always have been resourceful. We have to work around it, because at the end of the day, it's our business to take care of.
So what you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm correct, I agree 100%. Self-reliance and self-accountability.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're not going to get the grant, and sometimes they're going to cut your art program from the school. But you know what? I'm an editor, and I might charge a small fee to edit your thing freelance, and you might get this other person to donate his printing services and get a tax write-off, and that's how things happen. That's how things happen. We have to, be a little more resourceful and have confidence in each other. That's the problem. It's like, I encounter this in my professional journey too. It's like, things that I say need to be backed up by a male or someone who is non-black. Say, yeah, she's right.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's, you have to get this validation. No. What she's saying is correct. But why do I need that? Especially sometimes when it's somebody who looks like me. That's because we got to get our minds right. It's like, what I'm saying is automatically has less value and less credibility because of the body I'm in.
Mm.
This happens a lot. People don't necessarily believe you right away or think you are an expert, even though you show them your credentials.
Absolutely. And it's disheartening. For me, it's disheartening even more because the same people that have, I don't want to say have the attitude, but go about it in that way are the same people yelling that there needs to be more Keisha-Gaye Andersons, there needs to be more Lamont Jack Pearlies. But when they're in your face, it's,
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And that, what that comes down to, Lamont, that comes down to self-love. At the end of the day, this lack of self-love gets played out in many ways. And that's one of it. It's like not trusting yourself to make a decision or have good judgment. Granted, the things we do are not always reinforced or supported by the dominant culture. Yeah, we know that. But damn it, at some point, that's why writers have this freedom because, you're writing. It's me, myself, and I have to have faith that in what I'm writing is going to resonate with people. And even if it doesn't, I like it.
Right.
Anyway, to entertain myself.
If you don't like it, no one else will. And to keep it on the writing, especially the activism part, right? Mm-hmm. Because you do a lot in terms of courses. Let's talk about the courses and who you are teaching or training, and what are you teaching and training them?
I have taught a number of different writing workshops in a broad age range. I've taught adult and continuing ed. I've taught high school students who are taking college credit. I've taught traditional age college students. Largely, they've been expository writing and literature, like 100 or 200 level courses. And these are I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. I always learn something from the students, and it gives me a good window because you get to a certain age and you do kind of get removed from what an 18-year-old is thinking or doing.
Right.
And one thing I did observe, in my teaching practice is that, every 18 years you get a fully grown person who doesn't know anything about the past.
Wow, yeah.
Brought up Amadou Diallo in one of my classes, and nobody knew who he was. Now, whose fault is that? That's our fault. Because nobody, these things that are embarrassing, these things that are an inevitable eruption of racism. They're the inevitable result. Mm. The racism that is still rife, okay? They're inevitable. They pop up every now and then, and nobody wants to keep that going. They want to tuck it away and brush it away and not really revive it until it's at a safe distance, like Dr. King. That's 50 years ago. That's safe.
Right. So we could talk about that now.
But this Diallo thing happened when these kids were in my class were being born, and they didn't know anything about it. And it's important that they do, not to, incite some kind of riot, but this is information. It's like you have to know all aspects of the information in the society that you're functioning in. And if somebody's not going to talk about that, writers have to witness that. Witnessing. We got to, that's how we know a lot of things. through the fiction of people like Toni Morrison and Alice Walker, who described the times they were living in and the environment, you got to understand, what life was like for a particular group of people. That's the job of it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And I'm a big fan. Definitely, not that I'm not a fan of Toni, but I show favoritism to Alice Walker based on her love for Zora Neale Hurston, And I believe that kind of coincides with what you're saying, because each one was inspired by the information and stories of the others' generations, so to speak. Mm-hmm. What I find sad about it is, and who was it? Blase. I spoke to him. Go to the YouTube channel and watch that interview, because what I asked him was, and I'm going to ask you the same question, you being a writer, and to be a writer, and please, those of you who are listening, whether you are a literature writer, a songwriter, a screenwriter, a playwright, a column writer, you have to be an avid reader.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a craft. It's like, how am I going to make wood furniture if I never watched anyone make wood furniture? I mean, it's a craft like anything else. You have to be immersed in the craft. It is a tradition. People come along and advance it and move it and take it in new directions and do experimental stuff. And if they're skillful enough, it becomes something that others emulate. But it is a craft. It is something learned.
Absolutely. Now, with that being said, here's my question to you. Mm-hmm. The research and reading you've done, the writing you've done, how does it affect you? Knowing, because you mentioned earlier that you noticed this. How does it affect you knowing that what the topics that you're tackling has been topics that were tackled and experienced we can say as far as 100 years ago and beyond?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's that doesn't. It's not daunting in any way, because although this arc, of our experience in the industrial age, let's say, right? Because we can make a clear line of demarcation. We're not largely agrarian. Most people, are living in big cities,
right,
everywhere. Urban primacy is a thing. People are drawn to cities. So these things are slow moving, and they're, before there's a big shift, it's going to take a long time. But as we go through time, that you do see advancement. You do see a little more inching forward, a little freedom, a little more. When I look at, when people were up in arms, about the election and all of that, and, I heard some people say, well, Trump or Hillary, doesn't matter. I said, but you didn't experience Jim Crow. It's different from, it's like you've been through oppression, but this is not your great-great-grandfather's oppression. You don't have to step off the sidewalk when people are coming. So it is different. Let's not deny that.
Okay.
It's quite different. There are some major things that are the same, but it's different. So there is progress, and it's a work in progress because of the society and the kind of culture that we have built and that we have all agreed to. I mean, some of us, yes, our ancestors, by and large, unwillingly were brought over here. Others came here because they believed in the concept and of the American experiment,
Right.
And so here we are. What are we going to do about that? Because a lot of things still feel unresolved, and I think a lot of us who are writing about these things are just part of a long line of people who are doing this work. There is a tradition. We're in a certain tradition, and we're following that tradition, and the human life is short, Langston Hughes was here, he's gone,
Basically.
But his work lives on. It's a relay, somebody takes the batons, and then they look at it from a slightly different angle. And if you can visualize this as like, someone standing next to another person until they make a circle, till they go all the way around in a circle. This is kind of how we're looking at it. Langston stood here, he's gone, somebody comes stand next to him, somebody stand next to you, and they see it from a slightly different angle.
you know?
Right. I dig it, and I agree. Well, let's talk about your activism, right? Community activism, because there are those adults and young adults and children who, like you said, don't know things that happen to our community and culture within the last 10 years. Right? And there's those who do not want to, there's those who don't want to know, those who don't know how to, excuse me, or where to get whatever resources they're looking for their inspired change. How do you help this?
My mother will always, and my grandmother say, jig to the one that jigs to you. And now, a jig is an old-timey way of saying dance, right? The jig to the one who jigs to you. I mean, dance with the people who want to dance with you. And so I work with people who are of the same mind as me, and they don't have to look like me. Sometimes you're skin folk, ain't your kin folk, people say that.
Truth.
We all know this because that whole slave trade was complicated, and it wasn't it's very complex. The players, everybody was in it.
Right.
So
absolutely,
to work with people who are of my mindset, who are interested in the things I'm interested in, and what we do is work to create art or other things that can be utilized, by educators, and the community, and try to just share what we do, how we see the world, our perspective. I've heard people say to me, after reading a poem or something, they say, wow, I never thought of it like that. And that's what you want to hear. I never thought of it like that before,
Yes, absolutely.
They look in that direction.
Now, you guys, I know there's a group that you do a poetry series or workshop with, correct? Let's talk about that.
Worked with. There's different ones I've worked with over the time, but Women Writers in Bloom Poetry Salon is a group that I'm strongly involved with, and that model for that group is sort of based on the writing salons at the Harlem Renaissance, where men are welcome, but it's largely women, and we meet at people's homes, and there's always a featured writer, and there's a workshop going on, and people share their work, which is great. Because, the in-person is important now because everybody's online. But it's nice that we meet, we bring food. So that's one group. Another group I've worked with is the Caribbean Cultural Theater, and they have various programs that sort of speak to the Caribbean experience. So, there's different people, I've worked with based on my interests. And, I just try to... it's important that I enjoy myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because once it becomes a burden, it really...
The reason I do this is because I love it. That's it. I love it. I love myself. I love my culture, and I'm learning as I go along. There's things I want to explore, and making those connections gives me... it creates depth for me. I'm like, oh, well, this person is studying this, and I didn't know about that book and that book and that book. And that's how we do it. And,
I do. So now, with this new age of digital media, because you said at this point, it's that much easier to publish books, publish whether it's novels, short fiction, nonfiction, poetry. What about audiobooks? And how has this changed the playing field for writers?
Well, I just see greater opportunity for multimedia storytelling, which I love because, as you know, I was a television producer. So I love media, like media making, and stories through visual medium, using audio. I often perform with a reggae band. We did it just last night. The percussionist from the band, we did a reading together with the drumming, and we talked about, the Nyabingi drumming, and it was just we have all these senses. We have, sight, sound, hearing, everything. And if you can engage all the senses, film is such a strong medium because you're immersed in the experience when you're in a theater. It's engaging all your senses,
Right.
So I think that it's an exciting time, and I think that, writers should be looking into also shorter fiction, flash fiction, based on people's attention spans, not compromising the writing in any way, but giving people things in nuggets or chunks,
Right. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned a couple of writers and a couple of, well, it's hard to say. And when I say it's hard to say, you just, I guess for the commercial sense of things, you have to give someone a title. But I just like to say writer because a lot of these people wrote books, poems, plays, so but who are some of the people who inspired you or at the least made you say, this I can and want to do?
Oh, of course. I mean, there are so many. I can't begin, but certainly, the canon, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker. There's also Gail Jones. Fabulous, fabulous writer. There's also Octavia Butler, and I love speculative fiction. In fact, my novel is speculative. The one that was my thesis for graduate school, which I one day will finish. But speculative fiction, mine happens to be a ghost story. But
nice.
Yeah. So and there are my contemporaries, my peers, who are people that I know who are doing amazing things. There's Nnedi Okorafor. There's who just wrote Here Comes the Sun. Oh gosh, why am I blanking on her name? But that's her novel. Nicole Dennis Ben, she's great. Desiree Cooper, she writes flash fiction. There's just a lot of people doing a lot of stuff right now. I've been influenced by a lot, of course, James Baldwin, of course.
Absolutely.
Oh, Lucille Clifton, never forget her because she's a huge influence on me. Poet Lucille Clifton. So, Nikki Giovanni, a lot of people.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good. So most people. Well, I don't want to say that because most people who are serious about their craft do have. They're not like just me. So I don't want to say it, that. Usually people just say one person, but that's actually not true. I spoke to Sammy Blue. He mentioned a lot of people, and I mean, for myself, as much as I name one or two particular people, there's so many people that you could pull from that may not even be in the particular field that you're in. But let me ask you this. Now, we know that you have to enjoy it and that you have to love it. Mm-hmm. And you did state that when someone comes up to you and says, I did not look at it from this perspective, meaning you opened their eyes to something. Mm-hmm. Along with those things, what is the most, I would say one of the most important things you would like a reader or someone in your audience to walk away from? Walk away with, excuse me.
To be able to confront their deepest self and remove whatever is blocking them, because this is what happens to us. It's like, especially people who have experienced trauma, they have to create some narrative to get through life and be in the world, and the narrative is rooted in that moment of trauma. So they tell themselves things that are not true, but it's for survival, and then those things get filed away. And it becomes like your operating system or your hard drive. And they go through life and they have a certain attitude and they can't achieve their goals and they're blocked or they feel like they're not attractive or whatever it is. It's, I hope that the characters that we create by presenting their journey in literature or poetry, a person will say, oh, I can, take this road too. And look into myself and say, you know what? I can let that go now. This person is experiencing what I experienced, and this is how they were able to let that go. Because a big problem for people, especially sensitive people who are prone to be creative and artists,
right,
happens to us a lot. Because we're feeling everything. We're so emotional, and the world can be scary, especially if people are callous. It's hard. A lot of different kind of people in the world.
Yes, absolutely. And they all aren't so nice.
The thing is, I want them to understand, I want them to have tools for interrogating themselves and saying, hey, what am I capable of? Because when people are functioning at their peak, it's something to behold. And I know that most of the people in our communities, in the diaspora, in my culture, in the Caribbean, we're not functioning at our peak because we're traumatized. You know, within that trauma, you have Usain Bolt and Bob Marley's and all these amazing people, you know, lifting to do. We need to give people tools to say, wait a minute, you know, it is not okay that I just accept that I'm a subordinate person. Who said so? You know, challenge it.
Well, you know what? I'm happy you brought that. You mentioned some real extraordinary people. But the reality of the situation, based on your statement, which I agree with, everybody possesses what those two gentlemen possessed to get them where they are or were, right? What? Understand my question, because I know, well, I don't know, but I don't think you spoke to them and they told you what, you know, but what about them allowed, because I was asked this question myself, right? How did you, or how did this person that you look to, what about those two men are different from the thousands or even millions of black men that come from where they, which is we, come from?
Right. Well, you see, this is it's like a fingerprint. We almost can't answer this, right? Because everybody's fingerprint is different. Everybody is complex and different. But I would say that one characteristic that I, as an outsider, can observe, I didn't know these people, but I would say it is confidence. So it's some sort of unflappable belief in their own abilities. And how do you get that? One way you get that is by discarding everyone else's story about who you are and finding out who you are for yourself. If you find out who you are for yourself and what you like and what you don't like and what you're good at, and you can make peace with yourself. So if you try something and you don't succeed at it, you know, you're okay. You're cool. You're only competing with yourself. But if you're competing against these images, these Hollywood images of all these people that you think you should be, and you're less than them, and you'll never look like this one or that one, and you'll never be rich, you're going to fail every time. You're going to fail before you start. You have to be secure and know that you're complete in yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And this is what also people like Marley and Bolt and extraordinary people, Obama, they, on top of that belief, now they have an unflagging perseverance. They'll never stop. They'll never stop till they get what they want. And that's what it is. Sometimes it's just staying in it. Like staying in it. Shake it off, whatever the obstacle was, and the next day you go back and you're going to stay in it. And you have to be wise enough to stay in it. Not when it's damaging you, like a bad relationship. No.
Right.
But if you see it's still worth it, you check all the things, the factors at play, and you say, this goal is still within reach. I just need to chip away a little more. And I don't care what anybody says, that I can't do it. It's never going to work. Don't listen to anybody. And you do it. And it's often people who are comfortable with their own company. Like they don't need friends. They're fine with being alone for long periods of time. They're most like monks. You know?
Now,
develop that, you know?
Right. Because if you don't spend time with yourself, how do you know yourself and different things of this nature? Now,
running around, can't get nothing done.
Definitely not. Now, perseverance, confidence, and perseverance to me is the key. And in that, what I would like to ask, because from what I've witnessed and heard from brothers and sisters that's grown up in harsh environments, the thought that this is not for me, meaning whatever success that they were striving for, whatever the endeavor was, or this is where I'm supposed to be. Why should I? Actually, this is not just for people that are black. I've heard low to no income white folk say the same thing.
Of course.
This is all I'm supposed to be. Anything else, I'm trying for no reason because it's not going to.
If you're going to be, look at these men, these great men we revere, like Dr. King and Malcolm and Baldwin. All these men died, and they were like, well, Baldwin died a little older, but King was like in his 30s, Who he was. You see? He knew who he was and what he had to do, and he wasn't deterred. He was cool and calm, and he did it. Now, each person's path is different. That's why people who are extraordinary because they're rare.
Yeah, that's true.
Learn from we can't, use some of the techniques that they use to achieve modest goals for ourselves, and that is the goal. It's like you're here to be the best expression of yourself that you can be. You're not here to just coast along and do the least,
Right.
How are you going to learn anything,
Right. So how would you? All right. So we've seen and we've done and seen the hey young man, hey young lady. Here's this book of I don't know, Malcolm X or Harriet Tubman. This has gone on and it's worked. In some cases, there's a lot of readers out there that read up on their culture, whatever their ethnicity might be. Right. But now what can we do along with continuing to push literacy? Because I find that extremely important. Along with that, what else could we do to get folks, and it doesn't have to just be young folks, there's some older folks that need this encouragement to take the next step?
Mm-hmm. Or what's the next step?
No, not what is the next step. What can we do to encourage them? So, okay, you've read these things, you've seen these documentaries, you have this information. What are you going to do with it? How can we encourage them to believe in their journey and their calling enough to take the next step?
So if you look at, our journey, I would say we've done a lot since civil rights. In a short amount of time, there have been some things in terms of getting the stories of people like Benjamin Banneker and Harriet Tubman into the standard school curriculum. These things were not in the curriculum prior to the 70s. Right? Now this is a standard part of the curriculum in the school that everybody learns about. So check, that's the victory.
It is, actually.
That is a huge victory that people know who Harriet Tubman is, and she's mainstream now. People know, all of these stories. So that is progress. Now, the next step, what is the next step? Because, you have to, so here's the journey. It's like, first we had to uncover what is our history, because we didn't think we had one, right?
Right.
All the Black Pride and all that. And then, the Black Arts Movement comes along and says, yeah, it's nice that we're proud, but we need to be active and we need to change everything. We need some results. And that was necessary, too, to shake people up. For me, next steps, it's just, I think we need to take these inspiring stories and maybe model some of the behavior now, other than just being proud,
Right.
What are some of the things that these people did to achieve their goals? And in many ways, some of the climate, it's not like it used to be, but it's still, there's still challenges. There's some climates that still exist where there's places that you're not going to be told you can't go, but you definitely know that you're not welcome.
Exactly. And redlining still exists.
Muscle into those spaces because we can create other spaces. I don't need to be in that space. If I'm not welcome, I don't want to be in it. Like, I have, I don't need to be. I don't need to be accepted. I don't need your award. I don't want to be your mascot. If you don't recognize my work for its value, and you really just want to use my work as a conversation piece or some sprinkling of diversity. Party.
I'm sorry, it's not funny, but mascot and sprinkling of diversity, those two that's action words to me, because I feel that and I understand that. I'm not your sideshow. You don't need to say you have black friends and you like the blues. I'm clear.
The thing, but we also have to know what to want, because some of us want to be included so badly that we will do anything. Like, we see this as the ultimate,
I do know.
Our benchmarks have to be a little different if we really want to be autonomous about certain things. We're still part of a society and, and function in an economy and, and all that stuff, but there are decisions to be made. I don't know what the next step is, because for some people, we all at different stages. For some people that are just getting this information, it's like great self-esteem. For some people, they're like, well, I want to be, Harriet Tubman 2.0 and work on the prison industrial complex. And people are doing that. People
right.
are working hard, people I know, to advance that conversation and to expose, look at that documentary on the young man who killed himself.
Right, absolutely.
I never knew anything about that. You know what I mean? And I know that's the culmination, though. That's like what you see at the end. That people have been working on that for decades, trying to expose that system, No,
it's real. It's real. And it's just unfortunate that young man had to be the Emmett Till of the prison industrial system to spark this.
Exactly. And it's like, so things are happening, and they're happening at all different levels, but overall, it's more robust conversation than we've ever seen before around our history and issues, and it's coming to a head. It's like never before. I read a New York Times article from the turn of the century when, there was a man called Ota Benga who was in the Bronx Zoo. I think it was the Bronx Zoo.
Yes.
Okay, and this poor man died young, and the Times article was like, what's he so upset about? This is not different than what he's used to. You shut up. That was the tone of the article.
I want to say unbelievable, but it's not unbelievable.
But I would say there has been a shrinking of that gap of understanding, I think. I would like to say. I really believe so, in the general consciousness.
I hope so. I see spots of light, but I see a whole lot of things that remind me that, this is generational stuff. So most of these people that carry out some sort of racism or prejudice against people, whether it's just in statements or having a tone like you just mentioned, this is generational, like DNA. This is passed down.
Yes.
But I do want to say something based on our conversation on air.
Mm-hmm.
Your belief system, your vision, mm-hmm. your voice
mm-hmm.
in regular conversation definitely mirrors your at least the poetry book that my wife bought, that her and I have the pleasure of owning. Because if you listen to Maps, Whose Story, Firewoman, Present, right? Because you're extremely present. Sisters, I Am Caribbean. First of all, which one of the Whose Story? I love that. Which one of these are your favorite?
I wrote that about my mother because my mother inspires so much of my writing. She's hilarious. She's real funny, but my mom is just this old school, very Christian, very respectable lady who dresses fashionably and is like, she looked at my dreadlocks and she's like, are you going to keep your hair like that forever? Like, she resigned herself to say, okay, she's a grown woman, I can't tell her what to do. But at least she's still,
yeah, I get it.
Keep your hair like that forever. Because Mom, think Diane Carroll, she's fabulous. And I said, I don't even know yesterday, like, what forever. I'm trying to find out who I am and who I came. She said, why are you so interested in this black stuff, in slavery? It's like, you're so interested in it. I said, don't you want the faintest idea of how we ended up in the Caribbean?
Mm.
Said to me, my mother said, this one pushed that one in the boat, sayings, and I'm sure there's an equivalent in the South, and but like summertime, summertime's coming to an end, and when you're little and you're in school, and school's about to start, and they always say, your free paper are going to burn, meaning your free papers are going to burn up because school about to start.
That's right.
Right? What they don't, my mother in her consciousness is not thinking, what are free papers? But this is a saying. Right? Mm. Nobody's thinking consciously, what are free papers? Who had to carry free papers? And if it caught on fire, that meant you were put back in slavery. If somebody burns up your free papers,
wow.
Nobody is consciously,
wow.
Do we say these things? Or my mom used to say, when I was a teenager and getting fresh, and she'd say, you're lucky you're lucky I didn't sit on your neck when you was a baby, But, infanticide was huge among enslaved women. They would sit on their children and they would kill them rather than have them endure slavery, especially female children.
Right.
These are real things that are not necessarily easy to find in books.
Yeah.
Toni Morrison, she wrote about that in Beloved. That's the premise of that story.
Wow.
Very skillfully. So, I'm saying, for some people, I think probably in her generation, some of these things are too close to her that she doesn't want to explore them. But I'm far enough away, and I didn't grow up in Jamaica. I spent time. I was here in America since I was a child. So these things are far away from me, far enough away that I can interrogate them, through research and writing, where I could try to understand, why do people do these? Why are they always bracing themselves for disaster? From my point of view, the family, for disaster,
right.
Worse is going to happen because it's a trauma. It is a stress response to trauma. Something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, because that's what's always happened. At least through many generations.
Yeah.
It's generational, just like the other side of the story. This side of the story is generational too. We're coming to a close of the interview, but I just have to say before we close, or
mm-hmm.
Because you're a wife, so you understand if it's not done, it's going to be a problem. But Denise Pearlie, Mrs. Pearlie, my wife, is wants to make sure that I tell you that you inspire her.
Yes.
And that her two favorite poems from that book, your book, is Enough and Have You Seen My Mother? And 3 in Survival. Okay,
cool. I love it. That's what I want. That makes me feel good,
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah.
I like several. I Am Caribbean is one of them because I grew up on Nostrand Avenue. But you're a good sister. You got a great voice, and we need a voice like this.
Thank you.
And it's part of the blues. Roots and culture is the blues in the West Indies.
Yes.
So yet again, it's been full circle. I want to thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
For honoring Jack Dapper Blues Radio. I want to also thank you for coming and lighting up that stage when we have our I don't like to use that word ritual, our celebration.
Yes. It's always a good time.
And we look forward to seeing you again and your entire family. Love and blessings.
Yes. Same to you.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Guys, you've been bluesing with Jack Dapper Blues. That was Keisha-Gaye Anderson. Her book she has a couple of books, but the book that we were discussing right now is a poetry book called Gathering the Waters that you can find on Amazon. You can also find it on her website, which is Keisha-Gaye Anderson. I'll put the link on the Jack Dapper Blues on WFDU Facebook group page so you can check her out. She speaks from her voice, but she represents women of course, women of color, but also all women and all people. You know what? After the station ID, first song I'm playing is dedicated to this last segment. We about to get to bluesing, baby.